about 90% of the cars on the road today can go 100 miles an hour. About 5% of the cars on the road today can go 150 miles an hour. Less than 1% of the cars today
can go 200 miles an hour. Well, that's what he was going to say, but our interview was interrupted by someone taking the McLaren off-road.
The humidity.
And that wouldn't be our first interview interrupted by a rough runway entry, which goes to show how tough it is to hit the runway with the speed required to reach 200 miles an hour.
If you don't come off the taxiway onto the runway, which means using up all of the road, and the car is just kind of teetering on the edge at least 80 miles an hour, then you won't have enough RPM, which translates into speed, to hit the 200 mile an hour barrier.
So our assault on 200 miles an hour has begun. The weapons are the SLR McLaren, the Lamborghini LP564, and the car we've all been waiting for, the Ferrari 599.
A few years ago, Ferrari rolled out the Enzo, which was their ultimate supercar, and they only made 400 of them. And it was this mid-engined ultimate Ferrari ever. So they stopped making that, but they kept making the motor, and they put it in this, the 599. So this is a front-engine, two-seater. It's sort of like a GT car. It's not supposed to be a hardcore sports car, and yet it's got the Enzo motor under the hood.
All of these cars are capable of 200 miles an hour, but right now they're not getting much cooperation from Mother Nature.
It's very warm today, very humid, so we need to let the people get comfortable with the speed, and that's the first step. And then after that, when the weather will cool later this afternoon, we will give them two chances to make it.
In spite of the heat, the first driver returns in the SLR with some good news to report. 198 miles an hour on the first run.
198, Aaron.
For the first 5 drivers anyway, it seems like the Benz is the car to beat. I take my first run in the SLR. I fall into line with a rather exhilarating 198.
That's better than a cup of coffee.
But squeezing that extra 2 miles an hour out of the Benz is harder than we thought. The heat and humidity saps horsepower and puts a limit on our top speed.
This isn't horsepower weather, you know? These cars are all capable of 200, but when it's 85 degrees and humid, it's a lot of air to slog through and not a very dense charge for the motor. I'm gonna throw an ice pack under the hood of the Ferrari, give it another shot.
As we get into round 2, car after car blasts down the runway. There's 197s, 198s, and I even get the Ferrari to 199, but 200 remains just out of reach. Soon I'm joined by another driver who's just 1 mile an hour short. It seems like the Ferrari 599 may be the car to beat.
I think the Ferraris get less drag probably than McLaren, and of course less drag when you have a very thick air like today. It's probably an advantage. You know, everywhere we go, that 599s get maybe 1 or 2 miles an hour faster than any other cars.
Still, one after another, drivers come back just short of the mark. Well into the third round, nobody has joined the exclusive club. Then John Paul himself decides to give it a shot. This is his show, so we're all interested that he decides to go with the Lamborghini. When John Paul gets back, the 2 fingers tell the tale. 200 has been reached. So now we know that in spite of the humidity, it's possible. So we thought the Ferrari was the fastest car, but right now the Lamborghini has the hot hand.
As the day goes on, the quickest car may not be the quickest at the end, and vice versa. They kind of find their happy sweet spot. And equally, I think as the drivers spend more time behind the wheel of the one they've chosen to try and hit 200 with, they get more comfortable, they get more confident.
Sure enough, when Ted comes back in the Lambo, he's the first client to reach the milestone.
2 bills. Feels good. Nothing like 200 miles an hour.
So now everyone seems to be looking to the Lambo and the 599 as the tickets to reach 200. But our choices are about to get narrower. As we're all waiting to take our final shots, we hear a lot of chatter on the radio. Something bad happened. Sure enough, someone did a little off-roading at the end of the runway in the 599. When the instructors start speaking French to each other, you know they're not too happy. Or maybe that's Flemish. Either way, the Ferrari has been remodeled. So if I'm going to make it, it's going to be with the Lambo.
Well, it's now or never. This is my last run of the day. I don't think I'm going to get another chance to do this anytime soon. So let's see what it'll do. Coming up on 180, 180, 180, 185, 185, 190, 190. 195. Go, 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 go. In. Go, 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 go. 200! Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo! Holy hell! Today.
it was gonna make it, man. It's getting those last few miles per hour so hard. And the cones are approaching so quickly at that point. Good feeling. Well, thank you for being brave, and we'll turn on the air conditioning as your reward for that. 200! I was gonna say it was 200 even if it wasn't, but it really was.
So thanks to Nelson for giving me that split second beyond the cones, because now I'm a proud member of the 200 Mile an Hour Club. The cool thing about this is you can own a Lamborghini, you can own a Ferrari 599 or an SLR, but only under circumstances like this can you actually let them stretch their legs and take them to that elusive place the engineers designed them to go.